Welcome back, everybody. They've done it again, haven't they? And kind of the arithmetic of austerity, the cruel, cold calculus has delivered a final verdict, and that is 42 million Americans, 42 million souls are having the rug pulled out from under their dinner tables. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, the last thin thread for so many, first deliberately frayed and then cut altogether. And why? Of course, the official story is budget prudency. We must tighten our collective belts, but in reality, the underlying truth that they work so hard to obscure with their technocratic jargon is far uglier. It's the unmasking of a class structure that prioritizes private wealth and privileges profit over human life. The very first function of the modern state that's implicit in the social contract ever since the Enlightenment is to ensure the basic survival of the people, the protection of life. Thomas Hobbes, one of my favorite philosophers, and not exactly a radical, identified that as the raison d'etre of the government. Yet in the richest nation in the history of the world, our government is actively engineering the starvation of its own people, 12% of the population. We're told that this is a market economy, a system of freedom. But tell me, what kind of freedom is it when your daily bread is subject to the whims of a political class in a far-off capital? Is this freedom, or is this a carefully managed system of dependency where the state, at the stroke of a pen, can decide whether your child goes hungry or not? Or that perhaps it's just the cost of doing business in the free market capitalist society that we are subject to. This cut, this $8 billion hammer blow to the economy doesn't just vaporize into nothing. That burden has been shifted. First to the food banks, the charitable systems, the private nonprofits. They're designed simply to catch spills. It's a supplemental provision to the people. It's not meant to replace $8 billion of economic activity. How this works is a 1-to-9 ratio, where for every one meal that a food bank delivers, SNAP delivers 9. So now we have a tidal wave of desperation that's meant to be caught by the rusty bucket of charity. So in reality, what happens to these food banks is that they'll break. The volunteers will exhaust themselves and the shelves will go empty, but those 42 million people who are now hungry will not just disappear. Secondly, the blow lands on local businesses, because although SNAP is called food stamps, like it's some kind of a giveaway, freebie, handout, it's not. It's $8 billion and a guaranteed monthly demand for groceries. Small retailers, corner stores, and rural supermarkets rely on that circulation being there. When you cut SNAP, you don't just starve families, you starve Main Streets. You prove once again that the edifice of this economy is so fundamentally fragile that it cannot sustain itself without injections of cash into its very base. And when those funds are cut, the consequence is a ripple effect of mini recessions that happen throughout the households of every low-income family. Now, this isn't exactly new. This isn't a new story in human history. We can look back at the 18th century to the moral economy riots. This is where the people took to the streets to defend the traditional notion that the grain belonged to the people before it belonged to the speculator. This protest wasn't just about hunger, of course. It was about the righteous indictment of a system that celebrated and prioritized the profit motive before it did the sacred, unwritten duty to feed one's neighbors. Today's government, with its push for austerity, its constant hand-wringing, there's the nothing we can do mentality, just shows us that they are that modern-day speculator. It's an elite class declaring, as they did during the Irish famine, that the rules of the market, with financial necessity, must be upheld even though it would cause a large portion of the population to starve. Because food, you have to see that in their system is not a right. It's a commodity, and the commodity is something that must be paid for because you in fact have no entitlement to it. Even though it was produced by the people have no priority to the ownership of that commodity. And finally, that's the most damning consequence. Because when a society allows, when a political class allows the elderly, the disabled, 20 million children to go hungry just to score political points or to uphold a political dogma, then you know that your nation has become devoid of any kind of true morality. Morality is not a private or personal affair in this context. It's structural. It's baked into the very economic system. A truly moral economic system would build in safeguards that would ensure when a worker's wage falls through or there's some kind of crisis that hits, the human being is still protected. That basic subsistence is guaranteed as a dividend of citizenship in what is supposed to be the wealthiest nation on the planet. Instead, we have a system that's constantly shredding its liabilities and taking away the human element from its own society and calling the wreckage efficiency. Our political economic structure today has failed one of the most basic ethical tests. It has decided that the accumulation of wealth by the few is more important than the subsistence of the many. And as we watch the lines grow at the food pantry, as the supply line becomes more stretched thin, and we see these centers of supplement be shut down due to the fact that the demand for their resources has increased 3 or 4-fold. We must understand that this is not a policy failure. It's a moral diagnosis. We are living under a system that has decided that 42 million of its own citizens, that their lives are fungible, an acceptable sacrifice to keep the status quo, to maintain the unequal operation of this system, that is worth it. And we, the people, must ask, when do we decide that the price of our shared humanity is simply too high to maintain that unequal operation? The consequences of over 40 million Americans going hungry, half of which will be children, are dire. And I think that we're going to be stepping into some of the darkest days of our nation as we see a designed famine unfold on our soil. And the legacy of the decisions that have brought us to this point will go down in history, not just in the history of books, but within the cultural history that we carry in our hearts as citizens of this nation. But tell me what you think. If you're still here at this point, like and subscribe. Think about becoming a member. Donations are always welcome to the channel. This is something that should bother more of us. And one of the things that I'm seeing so frequent in any comment section, in any video that's put out there, is not just the justification for cutting food assistance from 12% of the population, but actually the celebration of it. People foaming at the mouth to see people have these benefits taken away. And I think that calling them benefits is a mistake. I mean, it's a benefit of being a citizen of this nation, but it shouldn't be looked upon as a shameful act. To ask for a helping hand when a helping hand is exactly what you need to lift you out of the situation that you're in. That is part of the social contract, to maintain a system where the people can live and thrive, and a country can maintain itself and progress to something that's more beneficial to the people. But in this unequal system that we have, it will never operate to benefit the people because it is not designed to do that. It is only designed to benefit the few. And perhaps it takes more proud pawns, right? More proud patriots to end up in the breadlines to actually understand the plight of many Americans. We can celebrate this country as much as we want for being the greatest and the richest in history, while at the same time carrying $38 trillion in debt, a number that is not even comprehensible to most Americans. We can do that, but at the same time, there has to be something for the people. Because if there's nothing for the people, then there's nothing for the people to fight for. If there's no benefit for the people to live in this country because the social contract has been shredded or been manipulated to such a degree that it becomes a contract of bondage, then at what point do the people say that that contract is null and void? This is a question that I ask, because I think that into the days that are coming forward, into the situation that Americans are finding themselves in, that conversation of if this contract has been broken will come to the forefront. It'll be put on the table and a decision will have to be made. Interesting times. Everyone, thanks for stopping by.